Hello, class, and welcome to one more lecture from Revelation. Okay, complicated book. And I know most of you, I wish we had the chance in a classroom to really talk about it face to face, but this is what we got, unfortunately. All right, but we're almost there. Okay, last video we talked about how when John sees something, he's brought into the Spirit. Okay, so that's like kind of a key moment in the verses, like when you see oh, then John was brought into the Spirit, or he was in the Spirit, or something like that. Pay attention, because that's going to start something. That's going to start some vision. And that's really what most of this book is filled with. It's vision after vision after vision. Okay, so we have visions of the throne of God and the seven seals. We talked about that in one video, the Bible Project video, about 7 and how it repeats itself over and over, this idea of perfection, relating back to creation. On the 7th day, God rested, this perfect Sabbath. Okay, you're going to see a lot of that number. 7 trumpets, vision of 7 trumpets, vision of a woman, a dragon, and a beast. That's interesting. The dragon here is the most common vision of Satan or the devil, right? Not Antichrist. Actually, the term Antichrist, as we see it in the Greek translated to English as Antichrist, it is not actually ever mentioned in Revelation. So Antichrist, biblically speaking, truly biblically speaking, it refers not to Satan, it refers to false prophets. So in other words, there could be Antichrist even now today. So if I were to say to you, oh, Jesus was a nice guy, but he wasn't really truly the Son of God. He was a great prophet, maybe, or a nice guy. That would be, you could call me an Antichrist if I actually were trying to teach that, right? That would be a false teaching. And so there are people that are still around that do that, right? That's not the term necessarily that Revelation uses for Satan. The term is used as dragon, this sort of beastly creature that is meant to kill and devour and destroy, but will be slain. I mean, every story you ever hear, right, about a dragon and maybe a knight or some warrior of some kind always defeats the dragon, right? All right, but this is where it gets a little confusing, because we don't have this warrior in the typical sense. In fact, we have Jesus riding on this white horse, okay? And he's going into the battle of Armageddon, which was an actual place. It's an actual field where they had believed where this last battle was going to happen. But Jesus is riding in on this white horse, okay? And he's pre-bloodied. The battle hasn't even started. He's pre-bloodied. It's a sign saying what Christ did on the cross, his death, has already won the battle. That we have a God who says, hey, listen, put down your sword, put down your weapons. That is not how peace is going to be brought. That peace is going to be brought by a perfectly loving sacrifice. And Jesus already did that. And so he's showing that through the church. He's like, listen, yes, it's so easy for us to take revenge. It's so easy for us to take up arms and fight against, right? That is not our call as followers of Jesus. We are called to live in the footsteps of Jesus Christ himself. And that's really not easy. It's easy for us to take avenge, right? It's easy for us to lash back, especially whenever somebody's hating us, especially when someone's persecuting us directly, which is what the early church was facing, right? But that's not the call of Christians. And so we have this Jesus who's on this white horse and pre-bloodied, and then it says he has a sword, but not in his hand. He's not ready to fight, as in striking people down. He's got this sword out of his mouth. It's a symbol of God's perfect love, right? A God who says, oh, when I speak, things happen. Things are created, right? This is the Jesus we see here on the cross. So there's all kinds of crazy, amazing images of and then we have another one where the lamb, there's another image, there's this 7 seals, right? And all these things that can't be opened. No one can open this seal, right? This wax seal on these scrolls. But then along comes this lamb, and it's bloodied too, right? It's, again, of course, Jesus represented as the Lamb of God. That's where we get that language. Who is able to open up this seal. Not somebody of power and might, right? Somebody who's going to forcefully take it into their own hands. Because in John's time and before and even now, all throughout human history, we have people who have tried to say, no, I'm the Messiah, right? I'm the one that you should depend on, not God. And so people basically literally making themselves as an idol, right? And in John's time, these would have been like the emperors. Like we have Domitian, right, who was the first emperor to enforce like emperor worship. Like they believed that, oh, the emperor was like literally a god, and so you should worship him. And so people like that throughout human history have said, oh no, I can, might makes right. I can take on God even, right? So maybe they're able to open up these scrolls, but no, it takes this lamb, this simple, like bloodied lamb, which is kind of disturbing, but also like pretty incredible, isn't it? So one of the coolest visions that we have here is of the heavenly realms. Now, before we get into really like the details of it, every time we see a vision, as we kind of alluded to last time, John's not trying to say, listen, whenever this happens, when I see this, this is literally what you should take literally, like word for word, this is what heaven looks like, okay? This is what John sees. This is his vision. When he's in the Spirit, this is what he sees. He sees one seated on the throne. And then on one side of the throne, he sees 12 seats, right? People sitting on those. And on the other side, he sees 12 sitting on those. These represent the old covenant and the new covenant. So the 12, right, tribes of Jacob or Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, right, which made up the old covenant, the old promises of God, right? God's faithful promise, but it was not fulfilled because of what people did. But God is unstoppable, right? And he says, listen, I'm going to fulfill my promise whether you break it or not. So there's these 12 representing the old covenant. And the 12 on this side, which you can maybe guess, represents the 12 apostles, the disciples that Jesus called to represent a new covenant, a new way of saying, this is what it looks like to be in right relationship with God. 12 here, old covenant, new covenant. And Jesus himself is sitting on the throne, mediating between all of this, saying this is all pointing to me. And so John is in this big room like this, and it's just like, wow. Again, it's not a literal, like, this is what heaven will look like this big room and one seated on the throne. But what we do get is a sense of what it will feel like. Maybe not so much what it'll look like, but what it'll feel like. What does it feel like to be in God's presence? Perfect presence. What does it mean to have a full revelation, right? The full truth, the full perspective of who God is. Well, that's overwhelming. That's a sense of like, wow, there is something beyond myself that all I can do is bend my knee and worship. And so when we see in Revelation that says every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, it's not a sense of like, you must bow, you will do this or else I will make you bow kind of thing. It's more of a sense of when everyone has seen the truth of who God is, whether they believe in God or have it all figured out or not, when they are in the fullness of God's revelation and truth and the perfect love of God, all they will be able to do is bend their knee and worship and confess that Jesus is truly God's Son and He is Lord.